Jaime Lannister had one of the best redemption arcs of all time, but did he actually, though? Don't scroll. Control your feelings for a second while I get to the point. Jaime Lannister has one of the most compelling arcs in A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, but people like to specifically label it as a redemption arc, and I think at the end of the day, that's kind of an incorrect labeling of it. Because at the end of the day, what has Jaime actually redeemed here? And I think we get kind of confused because I think what people are labeling a redemption arc is the character being kind of redeemed in the eyes of the audience. And what I mean by that specifically is that the character, we as an audience realize that he is a lot deeper and more interesting than we were initially led to believe. And seeing that kind of newfound depth for us, we interpret as some sort of redemption from the kind of shitty, simplistic version of him that we initially got before we were inside of his head, inside of his POV. Because remember, in the first two books, Jaime is not a point of view character. We see him through other people's eyes, and they are typically the eyes of people that don't have maybe the best image of him. So it isn't until we see Jaime as his own person doing his own thing that we see the complexity and we see that, yeah, he has these terrible qualities, but he also has more positive ones that are starting to reassert themselves a little bit. But that isn't redemption necessarily. Redemption implies someone who has acted out poorly has, done something to atone for those actions. And Jaime, unfortunately, kind of hasn't done that. Now, again, this isn't to say that I dislike the character or I'm not intrigued and enjoying the journey that he's going on, but he hasn't reached that point yet. I do think that that's kind of where he's headed. I do think he's heading for a larger form of redemption, but it's specific and he hasn't done the specific thing. And that specific thing is atone for the actual crime that he commits at the top of the series, and that is, yeeting Bran out a window. And I think it's easy to see how people kind of forget about that part, because once we are in his head, the struggles that he's kind of grappling with are not to deal with Bran. They're to deal with his own history and his own attitude that he has towards knighthood because of that history. Jaime was a young man who dreamed of knighthood and had this aspirational view of what knighthood represented, only to then join the highest order of knighthood, in this world, the Kingsguard, and realize that the world isn't as black and white as he thinks he is. Or he thinks it is. I'm keeping it in, it's fine. And so as that naive attitude slips away as he is made aware of the horrible things that he as a knight is expected to deal with, in his case, being a Kingsguard to King Aerys, he witnesses as Aerys is abusing his wife, is abusing the country at large, whether it's like the lords in his service, in the case of war, when he's wanting to, brutally torture and burn people. And then on top of all that, once he's experienced all this, he then is told that we are going to essentially burn the entire city. And also, while you're at it, while we're burning everyone alive, Jaime, why don't you go and kill your father for me? And so, understandably, Jaime becomes disillusioned with the idea of knighthood, and he stops taking anything seriously. That's how Tyrion describes him when we first see him from a point of view that, actually likes him, is that, Jaime doesn't take anything seriously. And that's understandable. He's had to disregard all of these notions of higher values because from his experience they don't exist. They're something fake. And the subsequent years after he took out Aerys have not been kind to him. Instead of being celebrated for, saving the realm, essentially by taking him out, he is scorned as an oath breaker, which is, extremely taboo in this society. And then, yes, he gets to keep his job, but now it's a job that he views as kind of a joke. Because what is knighthood? What are these things to aspire to if at the end of the day you are in service to monsters, essentially? And even after getting rid of Aerys, he now gets to serve Robert. Robert, who does not like him because he is a Lannister, because he does not like any of the Lannisters, including his wife. And so he's constantly fucking with Jaime. He's making Jaime, listen as Robert is, cheating on Cersei with any of the dozens of women that he does. And it's just this constant like mockery as he's stuck in this position. And so what we're actually watching in his journey is him, coming back from like the abyss. He is like descended into this like extreme, like I said, disillusionment and just what's the word? Cynicism. He has descended into this immense state of cynicism and bitterness, and that's where he's remained, and that's what's made him this unpleasant force in the world. And so what we're actually watching is him getting pulled back from that. His relationship with Brienne, as it develops, as they go on that journey together, he is kind of cluing her into some of the realness of the world, kind of a la Sansa and the Hound's relationship. But he's cluing her in to some like cold hard facts, and her idealism is kind of bringing him back from that pit. It's showing him that like these ideals like can exist in another human being because they exist in her. And so he's gradually getting better at, losing that cynicism, losing that bitterness, and actually like caring about the world in front of him, caring about the people that he is surrounded by, because he kind of lost that ability. He'd lost the ability to like truly care about people until he developed this relationship that kind of like reminded him of like of that boy that originally wanted to be a knight. And so this is beautiful character growth, and I love it, and it's a wonderful arc to watch. But it isn't redemption, because he hasn't atoned for the bad things he did once he was in that really shitty state. I can come out of a depressive episode and be very proud of myself for the hard work I've done to get myself to this point. But at some point, I still have to look back at all the shit that I did while I was in it and go ahead and like fix that, because I am not the only person that's important here. He's worked on himself, and that is wonderful. And he's even developed a good relationship with another person in Brienne and brought out kind of like the best in her. But he still has things that he needs to make up for. Bran was yeeted out of window. This isn't good. And part of the reason that I wanted to make this video is I feel like Jaime is a kind of polarizing character in which people like to kind of go to the extremes of how they feel about him. They either like love him and they're glazing him like crazy, or they're like actively hating him and like demonizing him. And I don't think that's the point of the character. He isn't this perfect redeemed man that's like shown us like the full beauty of humanity, at least yet, nor is he a complete monster because he hasn't atoned for the Bran thing yet. He's somewhere in the middle. He is a work in progress, and that is interesting, and that is, I think, very in line with what I think George's kind of point is with this series, because it's this big examination of humanity and all the shades that exist within it. People are rarely fully good or fully bad. They're typically somewhere in the middle. And in this case, Jaime is someone who, at this point, is trying to improve himself after starting from a point where he very much wasn't. And so I think that is something that people, gravitate towards, while other people are still like, hey, you still need to do something about all the bad shit you did. It doesn't matter how good you got if you don't. So is this a man redeemed? No. I don't think he's had the best redemption arc of all time because it's not done yet. I think there's a possibility for it to be done, and I hope that's where he's going, because I have liked watching his character grow, watching his character improve, and I think if he can reach the point where he can remember, some of the bad things he did and actually atone for them, then he really has reached that redemption. But not yet. Remember, please tell me what you want me to talk about next in the comments. You guys are very awesome. Hope you have a great night. Goodbye.